Hollywood's golden age shimmers in our collective memory like a perfectly lit close-up. All glamour, all grace, all illusion. Between the 1930s and 1960s, the major studios didn't just manufacture movies, they manufactured lives. Every smile captured by a photographer, every marriage announcement in Luella Parsons' column, every carefully staged family portrait was part of an elaborate fiction designed to protect the most valuable commodity in town, the star's image. But behind the soundstage doors and beyond the reach of the Klieg lights, these gods and goddesses of the silver screen were startlingly, messily human. They fell in love with the wrong people. They became pregnant at inconvenient times. They carried on affairs that violated the morality clauses embedded in their 7-year contracts, clauses that could destroy a career with a single scandal. The studios employed fixers, paid off gossip columnists, and deployed an army of publicists whose sole job was to make problems disappear. Pregnancies were hidden behind sudden European vacations. Children were rebranded as nieces, nephews, or adopted orphans. Entire lives were rewritten to preserve the fantasy that Hollywood sold to an adoring public. For decades, many of these secrets held. Some stars took them to their graves. Others watched as their children, now adults, pieced together the truth through whispered family stories, studio records, or DNA tests that finally confirmed what had always been suspected. Tonight, we're opening the vault of Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets, the hidden sons and daughters born from the affairs that Tinseltown tried to erase. Loretta Young and Clark Gable, Judy Lewis. In 1935, on a location shoot for Call of the Wild, two of Hollywood's most bankable stars began an affair that would produce the industry's most carefully guarded secret. Loretta Young, devout Catholic, America's sweetheart, and Clark Gable, married, rakish, untouchable, conceived a daughter amid the mountain wilderness of Washington state. Young disappeared from public view, claiming a nervous breakdown and retreating to Europe. When she returned months later, she entered a Los Angeles home for unwed mothers under an assumed name. The baby girl was born in November 1935 and quietly placed in an orphanage. 19 months later, Young adopted the child and named her Judy. The resemblance was unmistakable. Judy inherited Gable's distinctive ears, so distinctive that Young had them surgically pinned back when the girl was 7. For decades, the secret held. Judy grew up sensing something unspoken, piecing together glances and silences. Only in her 40s, after confronting her mother, did Young finally admit the truth. In 1994, Judy published her memoir. Young never publicly acknowledged Gable's paternity during her lifetime, though posthumous family statements confirmed what Hollywood had whispered for 60 years. Behind the studio gates, even motherhood requires script. Charlie Chaplin and Joan Barry, Carol and Barry. By 1943, Charlie Chaplin's personal life had become as dramatic as anything he'd ever directed. Joan Barry, a young actress he'd been involved with, filed a paternity suit claiming he'd fathered her daughter, Carol Ann. The case exploded into one of Hollywood's most sensational legal battles and exposed the complexities of love, law, and public morality in wartime America. Chaplin was first indicted under the Mann Act for allegedly transporting Barry across state lines for immoral purposes. He was acquitted. But the paternity trial that followed became a media circus. Blood tests excluded Chaplin as the father, a scientific fact. Yet California courts at the time didn't allow blood evidence in paternity cases. The jury found him legally responsible anyway, and he was ordered to pay child support until Carol Ann turned 21. The scandal damaged Chaplin's reputation irreparably. His leftist politics, multiple marriages to much younger women, and now this legal defeat made him a target. Within a decade, he would leave America entirely, settling in Switzerland. The case also changed legal history, eventually leading to reforms that allowed scientific evidence in paternity determinations. The cameras loved Chaplin, but the courtroom told a different story. Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini Robertino. When Ingrid Bergman traveled to Italy in 1949 to work with visionary director Roberto Rossellini, she was Hollywood royalty, Oscar-winning, wholesome, beloved. She was also married to Dr. Peter Lindstrom. Rossellini was married too. What happened next would become one of the most public scandals in film history. Bergman and Rossellini fell passionately in love during the making of Stromboli. By early 1950, she was pregnant. The news detonated across 2 continents. American newspapers condemned her as an adulteress. A U.S. senator denounced her on the Senate floor, calling her a powerful influence for evil. Her films were boycotted. Hollywood turned its back entirely. She gave birth to their son, Roberto Ingmar, nicknamed Robertino, in February 1950. A year later, she divorced Lindstrom and married Rossellini. They would have twin daughters in 1952. For nearly a decade, Bergman was effectively exiled from American cinema. Only in 1956, with Anastasia, did she return, winning her second Oscar and, slowly, public forgiveness. But the cost was steep, and the message clear. Even the most luminous star could be extinguished for choosing love over image. When the cameras stopped rolling, the judgment began. William Randolph Hearst and Marion Davies, Patricia Van Cleve Lake. For decades, Patricia Van Cleve Lake lived as Marion Davies' beloved niece, raised in privilege, welcomed into the glittering world of San Simeon and Hollywood parties, but always at a certain remove. Then, in 1993, on her deathbed, Patricia revealed what her family had long suspected. She was not Davies' niece at all. She claimed to be the secret daughter of Marion Davies and William Randolph Hearst. The relationship between Davies and Hearst, one of Hollywood's most powerful affairs, was an open secret. He was married, decades her senior, and one of America's most influential publishers. Davies was a comedic actress whose career he championed, sometimes to her detriment. They lived together openly for over 30 years, but marriage was impossible. According to Patricia's family, she was born in 1919 and immediately placed with Davies' sister Rose. The cover story held for more than 70 years. Patricia herself said she'd been told the truth in adulthood, but had honored the family's silence. After her death, relatives and biographers examined timelines, disappearances, and silences that seemed to support the claim. Yet no legal or medical proof ever emerged. It remains one of Hollywood's most tantalizing unconfirmed secrets, a life lived in the conditional tense, where truth and rumor became impossible to separate. Anthony Quinn, children with Friedel Dunbar and Catherine Benvin. Anthony Quinn lived as passionately off-screen as the larger-than-life characters he embodied on it. Married to costume designer Jolanda Adalori from 1966 until his death, Quinn nonetheless fathered multiple children outside that marriage, children he openly acknowledged, defying the old studio code of silence. In the early 1970s, while still married, Quinn began a relationship with Friedel Dunbar, his wardrobe assistant. They had two sons, Sean in 1973 and Alexander in 1976. Later, Quinn had a relationship with his secretary, Catherine Benvin, with whom he had two more children, Antonia in 1993 and Ryan in 1996, born when Quinn was in his 80s. Unlike the stars of an earlier generation who hid their extramarital children behind adoption papers and false identities, Quinn publicly embraced his sprawling family. By the end of his life, he had fathered at least 12 children with 3 women. He provided for them, acknowledged them, and included them in his legacy. Quinn's openness marked a shift, a crack in Hollywood's facade. The old morality clauses had lost their teeth. The fixers had retired. By the 1970s and beyond, stars could live more openly, though not without judgment. Even so, fatherhood remained a performance, played out across decades and continents. John Huston and Zoe Salas, Danny Huston. Director John Huston was a force of nature, brilliant, restless, and often reckless in both his art and his personal life. In the early 1960s, while married to his fourth wife, ballerina Enrica Ricky Soma, Huston began a relationship with Zoe Salas, a young Anglo-Indian actress and writer. In 1962, Salas gave birth to their son, Danny Huston. The boy was born out of wedlock, though Huston acknowledged him and remained part of his life. Ricky Soma, Huston's wife, stayed in the marriage despite the affair, and the family dynamic was complex, tangled, and never fully hidden from Hollywood insiders. After Ricky's tragic death in a car accident in 1969, Huston eventually married Salas in 1972, legitimizing Danny's status more formally, though by then, the secrecy had long since dissolved. Danny Huston would grow up to become an acclaimed actor and director himself, carrying forward his father's legacy. Huston's life illustrated a peculiar Hollywood truth. Some men were simply too big, too essential, too untouchable for scandal to ruin them. The rules applied differently depending on power, gender, and box office value. In the hush of a soundstage, some secrets simply stopped being secret, and no one dared object. Errol Flynn, the paternity suit of 1943. Errol Flynn's life was a tabloid's dream, swashbuckling on-screen, scandalous off. By 1943, he was embroiled in multiple legal controversies that threatened to end his career. Among them was a paternity suit filed by a woman who claimed he had fathered her 3-year-old child. The case arrived amid a storm of other accusations. Flynn had just been tried and acquitted on statutory rape charges involving 2 teenage girls. His reputation was in tatters, his image as the dashing hero of the adventures of Robin Hood clashing violently with the sordid details emerging in courtrooms. The paternity claim added another layer to the portrait of a star, living far beyond the bounds of acceptable behavior. The case was ultimately dismissed, but the damage lingered. Flynn's career never fully recovered its earlier luster. He continued to work, but the roles grew smaller, the studios less forgiving. He died in 1959 at 50, his body ravaged by years of excess. The paternity suit itself faded into Hollywood's archive of unproven claims and legal maneuvering. But it served as a reminder, even the most charming rogue could be brought low when the spotlight turned harsh. Behind the bravado, there were always consequences. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, the unacknowledged relationship. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn's love affair is Hollywood legend, decades-long, profound, and conducted almost entirely in private. Tracy was married to Louise Treadwell, a union he never dissolved despite years of separation. Hepburn remained his devoted partner, accepting the terms of a relationship that could never be fully public. There was never any confirmed child from their relationship. Yet whispers occasionally surfaced, particularly around the timeline of Tracy's son, John, born in 1924, with profound hearing loss. Some speculated about overlaps, timelines, and the mysteries that surrounded Tracy's intensely private family life. No evidence ever substantiated these rumors. What remained undeniable was the sacrifice. Hepburn sublimated her own desire for family, marriage, and public recognition to preserve Tracy's reputation and their bond. She visited him in secret, cared for him through his final illness, and absented herself from his funeral to avoid scandal. Their story is often romanticized, but it also reveals the cost of loving in the shadows, the children never born, the lives never fully lived, the compromises that became a kind of identity. In the end, secrecy itself became their legacy. Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra, the miscarriages and rumors. Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra's tempestuous marriage burned brightly and briefly in the 1950s, passion, jealousy, and career pressures colliding in spectacular fashion. Both were under intense studio scrutiny. Both were contractually bound to protect their images. And both, according to later accounts, faced the studio system's darkest interventions. Gardner later admitted in interviews and authorized biographies that she had terminated pregnancies during her marriage to Sinatra, pressured by MGM to avoid any scandal that might disrupt her box office value. The studio doctors arranged the procedures. The publicity machine ensured silence. For years, rumors persisted of at least one miscarriage or a pregnancy carried further before being ended, stories that Gardner herself hinted at but never fully detailed. No child from their union survived. What survived instead was grief, regret, and the gnawing sense that their lives had been shaped by forces beyond love or choice. Sinatra remained haunted by the marriage long after it ended. Gardner spoke of it with a mixture of defiance and sorrow. The absence of a child became its own kind of legacy, a silence that spoke louder than birth records ever could. Behind the glamour, there were choices no one should have had to make. Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato, Cheryl Crane's tragic involvement. Lana Turner's life was Hollywood melodrama made real, beauty, fame, tumultuous romances, and ultimately tragedy. Her relationship with Johnny Stompanato, a mobster with ties to organized crime, was volatile and dangerous. On April 4, 1958, that volatility ended in death. During a violent argument at Turner's Beverly Hills home, her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed Stompanato in the abdomen, killing him. Cheryl claimed she was protecting her mother from his threats. The inquest ruled it justifiable homicide, but the case exposed years of hidden domestic turmoil, abuse, and a mother-daughter relationship scarred by the chaos of Turner's love life. Cheryl was placed in custody temporarily, then returned to her grandmother. The scandal dominated headlines for months. Turner's career survived, but the family's private pain became public spectacle. Cheryl later wrote memoirs detailing a childhood spent navigating her mother's many marriages, the intrusions of fame, and the night that changed everything. This was not a hidden child, but a child forced into the spotlight in the most tragic way, a daughter shaped by her mother's choices and Hollywood's relentless gaze. When the cameras stopped rolling, scars remained. Rita Hayworth and Prince Ali Khan, Yasmin Aga Khan. Rita Hayworth was Hollywood's ultimate love goddess, a title that came with impossible expectations. In 1949, she shocked the world by leaving Hollywood and marrying Prince Ali Khan, a charismatic playboy and heir to the spiritual leadership of millions of Ismaili Muslims. Their daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, was born later that year. The marriage itself was the scandal. Hayworth abandoned her career at its peak, defying studio contracts and expectations. The press painted her as a fallen woman, seduced by wealth and title. The reality was more complex. She sought escape from a suffocating star system and a chance at a private life. The marriage lasted only a few years. Hayworth returned to Hollywood, but her career never regained its former heights. Yasmin grew up between two worlds, Hollywood royalty and actual royalty, and later became a prominent advocate for Alzheimer's research after her mother's long battle with the disease. Yasmin was never hidden, but her birth represented a rupture in Hollywood's carefully controlled narrative. Her mother chose love, scandal, and eventual exile over the studio's demands. It was a choice that redefined what was possible, even if the cost was steep. Charlie Chaplin and Una O'Neill, the scandalous age gap. When Charlie Chaplin, 54, married Una O'Neill, 18, in 1943, the scandal was immediate and ferocious. Una was the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill, who disowned her over the marriage. Chaplin was already embroiled in the Joan Barry paternity case. The public saw an aging libertine and a girl young enough to be his granddaughter. But the marriage endured. Chaplin and Una had 8 children together, including actress Geraldine Chaplin, and remained devoted until his death in 1977. They left America in 1952, exiled by McCarthyism and public hostility, and settled in Switzerland, where they raised their large family in relative peace. The children were never hidden, but their existence was inextricable from scandal. The marriage that produced them was seen as inappropriate, even predatory, by contemporary standards. Yet Una and Chaplin's bond appeared genuine, tender, and lasting. It remains one of Hollywood's most uncomfortable legacies, a relationship that challenges easy judgment, a family born from what many considered a moral failure. The line between love and exploitation was debated then and remains debated now. Loretta Young and Spencer Tracy, early affair rumors. Before Clark Gable, there was Spencer Tracy. In the early 1930s, Young and Tracy worked together repeatedly and were rumored to have conducted a passionate affair. Both were Catholic, both understood the stakes, and both, according to Hollywood whispers, may have concealed more than just the affair itself. Speculation persisted for decades that Young had been pregnant during this period, though no child was ever publicly acknowledged. Studio records, travel itineraries, and sudden absences fueled the rumors, but nothing was ever confirmed. If there was a pregnancy, it ended quietly, either through miscarriage, termination, or an adoption so secret it left no trace. What is undeniable is that the rumor clung to both stars for life. Young's devout Catholic image made any suggestion of an affair scandalous. Tracy's complicated personal life, his marriage to Louise, his relationships with Hepburn and others, added layers of ambiguity. The affair, if it happened as rumored, was buried under the weight of studio machinery, religious guilt, and the desperate need to protect 2 careers built on virtue. Some secrets were so deeply buried, even the truth became uncertain. Peter Lawford and the Marilyn Monroe connection. Peter Lawford occupied a unique position in Hollywood, Rat Pack member, Kennedy-in-law, and frequent companion to Marilyn Monroe during the final years of her life. Rumors swirled then and now about the nature of his relationships, the parties at his Malibu beach house, and the possibility of hidden affairs and consequences. Speculation has long persisted that Lawford may have fathered a child in connection with Monroe's social circle, though no credible evidence has ever surfaced. What is documented is Lawford's role as a facilitator, a man who arranged meetings, hosted gatherings, and stood at the intersection of Hollywood glamour and political power. After Monroe's death in 1962, Lawford's life spiraled. His marriage to Patricia Kennedy ended. His career declined. He became estranged from the Kennedy family, shut out of the world he'd once navigated so smoothly. If there were hidden children, hidden affairs, or hidden truths, Lawford took them to his grave. What remains is a portrait of a man who lived at the edge of other people's secrets, forever implicated, never quite confessing. In Hollywood, proximity to scandal could be as damaging as scandal itself. Clark Gable and Kay Williams, John Clark Gable. Clark Gable died of a heart attack on November 16, 1960, at the age of 59. He never met his son, For months later, on March 20th, 1961, Gable's fifth wife, Kay Williams Gable, gave birth to John Clark Gable, a final chapter in the King of Hollywood's complicated romantic legacy. Gable had longed for a son his entire life. He'd had a daughter, Judy Lewis, though he never publicly acknowledged her. Kay's pregnancy was a source of joy in his final months, even as his health deteriorated. He died before he could see the boy who would carry his name. John Clark Gable grew up in the shadow of a legend he never knew. He pursued acting briefly, appearing in films and television, but never escaped comparisons to his father. He also faced the complicated legacy of the Gable family, half-sister Judy Lewis, whose existence had been denied for decades, and a father whose greatest role may have been the illusion of invincibility. John represented both a beginning and an ending, the son Gable wanted, arriving too late, carrying a name synonymous with old Hollywood's fading grandeur. Even in death, Gable's story continued to unfold. These 15 stories span decades, continents, and an extraordinary range of human experience: love, ambition, sacrifice, and the quiet desperation of living behind a mask. What unites them is Hollywood's relentless machinery of illusion, a system that demanded perfection and punished humanity. The children at the center of these stories lived for years, sometimes lifetimes, in the shadows of secrets. Some were raised as orphans or nieces. Others carried names they later learned didn't belong to them. Many only discovered the truth through deathbed confessions, posthumous memoirs, or DNA tests that made denial impossible. Hollywood's golden age was built on control. Control of narrative, control of image, control of truth. The studios employed fixers, bribed reporters, rewrote history, and ensured that what the public saw bore only the faintest resemblance to reality. Morality clauses in contracts gave executives power over every aspect of a star's life. Pregnancy was a crisis. Divorce was a catastrophe. An affair with the wrong person could end a career overnight. But secrets have weight. They press against the edges of silence. They shape lives, warp identities, and create distance where there should be intimacy. The hidden sons and daughters of old Hollywood grew up knowing something was unspoken, sensing the gaps in their own stories. When the truth finally emerged, it came with a mixture of relief, anger, and grief for the years spent living someone else's fiction. What's striking is how many of these secrets held for so long. Loretta Young's daughter didn't learn the truth until she was in her 30s. Patricia Van Cleve Lake waited until her deathbed to claim her real identity. Even in an age of relentless media scrutiny, the machinery of Hollywood silence functioned with ruthless efficiency. But the silence also came at a cost to the stars themselves. Loretta Young lived with guilt and secrecy for decades. Ingrid Bergman endured exile and condemnation for choosing love. Katharine Hepburn sacrificed marriage and motherhood to preserve Spencer Tracy's reputation. Ava Gardner spoke of abortions forced upon her by studio mandate. These were not the lives of glamorous icons. They were the lives of people trapped by their own fame. Today, we look back at these stories with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. The power dynamics are troubling. The age gaps in some relationships are shocking by contemporary standards. The control exerted by studios over women's bodies is chilling. Yet these stories also remind us of something fundamental. Even the most carefully constructed facade eventually crumbles. The sons and daughters profiled here lived in the spaces between truth and illusion. They were the evidence that couldn't be erased, the proof that Hollywood stars were human after all. In telling their stories, we acknowledge not just the failures of their famous parents, but the cruelty of a system that demanded perfection at any price. Behind the glamour and the gossip, these hidden lives remind us Hollywood's brightest stars were only human, and even the greatest secrets can't stay buried forever.